There we go. Very nice. So my name is Teo Lashiv, and let's go through how many of you are new? Curious, how many are new to the meeting? Anybody new? Put maybe in the chat. Yeah, you're new? Where are you joining us from? I am, okay, Shreya. I'm from Atlanta, nice. Michigan, there we go. Wow, I dare not ask what's the weather in Michigan right now, but we got somebody from Brazil. Sugar Hill, Georgia. Wow, well, that's a little bit closer than Brazil, but great, cool. So Chattanooga, that's in the middle. Well, welcome to our, our group. I'm not sure how you guys heard. More than likely it's Meetup or another venue, but we actually have three. Our official one happens to be atlantabi.pass.org. So we are affiliated with an organization called PASS that all of you know about because this is these guys that organize SQL on SQL Saturdays and also the PASS Summit. So we have been associated with them since the very beginning. If you are a member, you can associate yourself to get these beautiful reminders and you never ever miss a meeting. Okay, before each meeting, what do? You go to the atlantabipass.org and you tell us that you're coming, which is not so important nowadays because we don't have pizza. Unfortunately, we cannot feed you, but still would like to know how many people will be planning to attend. So you do that. And after the meeting, if you like what you get, spread the word. Tell your coworkers, I've got some cool time. I've learned some stuff. You know, the more the better. So tell your coworkers about that. Invite them. Our meetings are complimentary. We start recording since the world collapsed. We start actually recording our virtual meetings and we make them available at this URL right here, https bit.ly Atlanta BI Rex. Okay, so you can find them there. If you want to get a little bit more involved, right now the situation of sponsors actually took care of itself, so we don't need sponsors. Typically, we are self-reliant. We need sponsors for buying food and drinks for every meeting when we used to meet at the Microsoft office. But now, not so much, so that's fine. If you want to present, always looking for good presenters, please let me know. We'll definitely contact you. Donations, we take small and large at gofundme.com gofundme.com Atlanta BI. And we're planning to use them once we start to get us to have funds if we don't have a sponsor to buy food and drinks. Cool. Speaking about jobs, I'm so happy that Sri, I think, said that he's is employed after a few months of downtime because of layoffs. At this point, I would like to. Somebody is requesting control. Everton, I'm sorry, I'm gonna deny you.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
I clicked it wrong.
It's okay, no problem. But going back to the slides, at this point, I would like to ask if anyone has any job opening to advertise regarding Microsoft BI. Is anyone looking for Microsoft BI talent? Well, I guess Maybe not this time. Usually we do have a few openings. I guess this time. Nobody, I guess holidays. Everybody is ready for the holidays. Nobody actually was working. So, but if you have any job opening, please put it in the chat window or anything else, share just to help the community, because I'm sure that some people are going to be interested. Very nice. Okay. What else we've got here? Okay, so we have people, somebody who is looking for a job. If somebody is hiring, let him let him know. The only event left for the remainder of this year, this month, actually next week, is the PASS Summit. And it's actually paid event. It's a virtual but paid. It's always a good show. So there's still time to, I guess, sign up. Oh, thank you, Shreya. So it looks like Key2 Consulting maybe is looking for some people. That's good. Very nice. Cool. What else? Okay, so let's now.
Another one is the Atlanta BI SQL Saturday coming up on December 5th.
On December 5th, we have Atlanta BI SQL Saturday coming virtual, I guess.
Virtual, yeah.
Okay,
so,
that would be nice.
Yeah. So
December
if you're
5th.
interested in attending, please go and sign up on the online, and we'll have some really good sessions. I think a lot of good submissions are coming in, and it'd be great to have you guys attend that. So
Cool. That's great. So they go to sqlsaturday.com and just get it from there, I assume, right?
yes, yeah.
Thank you, Damo. Cool. So next thing on the agenda, just to share some exciting stuff happening around Power BI, Microsoft BI in general. You know, at least things that kind of grab my attention. Of course, there's a lot of other stuff happening, but I guess the most important ones were that, a lot of organizations, especially large ones, are interested in data governance, right? Data governance is a big topic. How do we manage access to data sources, to gateways and such? So maybe some of you know that there is something called Power Platform Admin Center. So Power BI is a part of the a Microsoft platform called Power Platform, together with Power Apps, Power Automate, virtual agents. And it so happened that Microsoft put together this Power Platform Admin Center to help administrators with monitoring and managing some aspects that apply across all of these technologies, right? So for example, for Power BI users, the one that may inspire the most interest is this data section here. You have to have certain privileges to get to this, have to be Power BI admin portal. So not everyone can go there. But if you do, then you could go into this data section, turn off this tenant administration slider in the top right corner, and now we can see gateways that are installed in our organization, such as enterprise gateways and also personal gateways, So now you can actually go ahead and chase these business users that have installed gateways that we don't have an easy way to tell them not to do, or enforce policies for not to install personal gateways. But once this refresh, you'll see the list of gateways installed in the organization. I don't know why it's taking so long. So that's a good thing. So we had that before, actually. The new features is that now we are adding data sources. So we can see what kind of data sources are registered across the entire tenant. So we can do that. And then we can also go to the settings and see more information about that data source. So it's a new feature for, I guess, data governance, see what kind of data sources we have across the entire Power BI tenant. Okay. The next thing, we have an interesting feature called data types in Excel. How is that cool? Well, it so happened now for this feature, probably you have to be on a recent build in Excel. I'm on the something called Insider build in Office 365, so I get all the features before they get released. But if you go to the Data tab in Excel, you will see something called data types. So these 3 data types here are included in Excel. So what's going on here? How is that cool? Well, we have a geography type, which I can easily demonstrate by specifying, let's say, a country like United States. So imagine you have a list of countries here, right? Canada, maybe it's going to be another one, right? So because they're geography related, I could go here and I can say this column has geography data in it. So when Excel recognizes that, what I can do, I could click United States on the left side, and it gives me some information about the country that it found on, in this case, Bing. And the cool thing, so this data type is like a lookup, essentially. If I can map it, I could look it up by clicking this little icon on the left side. Not only this, but if let's say if I have a data type, I could add columns from the lookup. So that drop down that pop up, I can go here and I can say, what's the population of United States? And I can do obviously the same thing for Canada. So I can add, I can create new columns from this list. So how is that related to Power BI? Because what I can do, I can go to Power BI, I can create a data set. Maybe, there's a lot of talk, again, going back to data governance nowadays, to certify data, to pre-approve it. So I can go ahead and create in Power BI, maybe I have common dimensions or common tables like customer and product. So I can do the same thing. If I have those, if I mark, there is a configuration setting in Power BI at the dataset level that you want to associate this with Excel data type. If I do that in Power BI, then those data types are going to appear here. Excel will automatically discover them, and I can do the same thing. If I have a customer entity, I can have a list of customers, then I can set it as a customer type, and then I can go ahead and add columns from that entity. Yeah, so this is Excel in Office 365, and it's data type section. I think I mentioned to you that talking about Excel, in one of the latest builds, you probably, even if you're in Office 365, you won't see this feature yet because it's not GA. It's not generally available. But another feature that is coming up is, let's say I want to create a pivot table from Power BI dataset. Now, what I can do, instead of using analyzing Excel, instead of starting from Power BI, I can do it directly in Excel. I can go to the insert. Now we have a little expansion drop down at the pivot table, and I can say from Power BI. So at this point, Excel is going to connect to my Power BI instance. It's going to show me all the data sets that I have access to. And now I can go ahead and connect to that data set. So the net effect is going to be the same as analyzing Excel that has been around for since the very beginning almost. But the difference is that the difference is that, let me see, like this one here, connect to one of the data sets. The difference is that we're doing it within Excel, right? We don't have to go into Power BI. Everything is in Excel. I can build my pivot tables and pivot chart. Cool. That's a third feature that is coming up here. You also need to be right. Third feature that is coming up here is certified, again, in the area of data governance. So previously, and by the way, if you download this slide is available, the slide deck, just like everything, the other slides that presenters give us, it's available in the resources section of the atlantabi.pass.org. So you can get it the November 2020 meeting. So you can download it and you can get these links here that point to kind of more details, kind of Microsoft documentation behind these features. So previously, we could, some of you are probably familiar with certified data sets. You know that, as I mentioned, part of the data governance story is to pre-approve, you know, content. So IT might be responsible for overseeing, not might be, but should be, as a part of managed self-service BI, to oversee what's happening, what users, business users are doing. For example, analyze their data sets they're contributing, and if they're okay, kind of certify them. Certification in Power BI is nothing more than a stamp. You know, there is no security policies. I cannot say users can only use certified data sets. No, it's just like a stamp of approval. All right. So previously, we were able to certify and promote data sets and data flows. Now we can do the same thing with reports and apps. How do we do that? We go to Power BI. We go to, let's say, some report, and then we go to the settings of that report. And then on the setting, there we go. We have an endorsement feature currently in preview that allows to promote and certified content. Okay. So typically when I do assessments for data governance in Power BI, you have to kind of advise the customer, how do we establish managed self-service BI? What's going to be the workflow, right? So for example, if you have what we call Power BI champion, somebody who is responsible for the overall administration of a workspace and of its content, then that person should have the authority to also certify. Promotion is open for everyone. Everyone can promote a data set. If you're a member of a workspace, you can do it. But certification can be actually narrowed, can be controlled. You can say only specific people in my organization can actually certify a data set, or in this case, a report. So we have this now at report level. We have it also for apps. And the final feature, which unfortunately I'm not very excited very much about it. It's called dynamic mQuery parameters, but I still think it has a lot of potentials. So if you want to get the whole story, you can go to the reason why I'm not so very happy about it. You can go to my website and you can go to the blog section in the community blog. And the last blog that I wrote is on this subject, Power BI dynamic mQuery parameters. So to give you an idea about what this feature actually is doing, first I have to tell a little bit about the limitation of Power Query. So those of you who use Power BI know that we have a layer called Power Query, which allows business users to do self-service transformations, right? Like ETL, but for business users. Does anybody have a question? There's some noise. Anybody want to ask something? No. Okay. So we have that feature Power Query, and then we can create parameters. So for example, if I want to filter a table, and I want to make this kind of easy to manage, I can say, give me all the data since given parameter, like a start date, that I can establish. The problem with parameters and Power Query in general is that first, parameters right now, they are static. Static meaning that I have to associate them at design time, or I have to associate them when I publish the data set, but I have to specifically specify the values of this parameter. And another problem that we have with Power BI today is that when it comes to Power Query and the data model, they're like two different universes. Although they're packaged in one file, when you deploy, the data model cannot pass anything to Power Query. So if I want to make this parameter a little bit more versatile, if I want to say it depends on the identity of the interactive user or depends on the filter, I can't do it because Power data model cannot pass. So this is when we import data, if the data is imported, that's not a big issue because data is already cached. There is nothing to parameterize. But direct query is a different story. So here I'm talking about a scenario that I have recently for one large ISV customer who wanted to do each one of their clients. The data is in a separate database. So they wanted to do Power BI reports on top of this, but they wanted to have the ability to change the connection from the data set at runtime. So if I come from Prologica, I want to go to the Prologica database. Come from Acme, I want to go to the Acme database, right? So ideally, we could have just one data set because all the databases have the same schema. We could have just one data set that dynamically switches connections depending on who the user is. Unfortunately, Power BI cannot do this today because of the limitations that I mentioned. So recently, however, in the November build of Power BI, Microsoft added dynamic mQuery parameters, with the big caveat that the way this architected this feature is only for what we call managed connectors in Power Query. And these managed connectors are essentially everything else that is not the traditional relational databases. So the traditional connectors to traditional relational databases, they use native, what we call native connectors. They essentially a wrapper on top of the OLEDB or ODBC provider. So unfortunately, this feature, which is kind of similar to what I want to get at the end, does not work with relational databases. It works for things like Azure Data Explorer, Redshift, Snowflake, Google BigQuery, kind of more recent data sources. It will work with custom connectors, but not with traditional, which is the most common data source type. Further, dynamic query parameters, they still cannot, they're not that flexible. For example, they cannot pass the user identity, cannot pass any DAX measure. So there is quite a bit of work, but at least this is a step in the right direction. So if you want to play with this, if you have one of these connectors, like this Redshift, Snowflake, Google Data Explorer, can take a look at that feature. Maybe you'll find it useful. The rest of us who are still living in the relational world, most of us, we have to wait. Questions about these features? Anybody? Any questions? Yes, everything is clear as mud, I assume. Final feature that I want to mention is that on premises, we have Power BI Report Server, add-on to SSRS, which you can deploy not only SSRS reports, but Power BI reports. Microsoft updates it every 4 months. So October 2020 release is out if you use that. Cool. If we don't have any questions, I don't see anything in the chat window, not anything online. So what I'm going to do at this point, I'm going to invite Brian from CCG to come up, share his screen, and we're going to continue with the main presentation. Thank you so much. That's all from me.
Thanks.
Hi, Brian.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Again, Theo, thanks for having me. I'm really hoping this is informative. We're going to keep it fairly informal. And rather than just sort of walking through, do this, don't do that, I'm actually going to present it in case studies that I've recently worked on. So it's also a little bit more directly related to real world applications. But the presentation itself is all around performance pitfalls in Power BI. I identify some at multiple layers within the BI stack, just to give you an idea that they really can come from different places. But before we get into that, quick agenda. Introductions. I'm going to sort of frame the problem, give examples of why performance matters. We're going to go through those 2 case studies, and then I'll do a quick recap. If there is some time left over, I do have a live demo of using some of the tools that we can walk through, and then questions from there. So if you do have questions along the way, just drop them in the chat, and I'll sort of address all of those at the end. First, introductions. I'll start with CCG, the company I work for. We're a full-service analytics consulting firm located in Tampa, Florida. We've been around about 20 years. We are a Microsoft Gold partner, so we predominantly work on the Azure stack. That's everything from back-end to a ton of front-end, Power BI, Power Platform work. And I'm a senior consultant with CCG. I have a pretty good amount of experience in tabular model optimization, report optimization, and design. Prior to moving into the consulting world, I was a lead analyst for a tech startup, a augmented reality, virtual reality company called Marksent. If you've ever been into a Macy's to shop for furniture in the past year, you may have seen the VR headsets that they have deployed across all their stores. And my experience is predominantly in retail, healthcare, and then a few years of SaaS analytics. So before we really get into the what's going wrong or where do you look to go wrong, I sort of wanted just to frame the problem and help understand what the effects can be of having poor performance. So first, what is performance? Specific to this presentation, it's going to be all around query load speed, cumulative page load times, and then data model refreshes and data model sizes. And ultimately, it looks to really answer the question, why does it take so long to load? So to give you just a quick story about how I actually got interested in learning about Power BI performance and how to make reports run faster. This is 6-7 years ago. I was about 23, 24. I just started working for the tech startup. And I was tasked with building this massive report of, show all of our clients how the app is performing and how it's actually helping their businesses, everything from ROI proof to what's being used in the application, kind of all of those different things. So I built that report. It was a pretty large report, 10, 12 pages, lots of visuals, very, very beautifully done, if not to toot my own horn. But then I go to present it to our actual CEO at the time, a guy by the name of Beck Biesecker. And I pull it up, and naturally I didn't preload the page, so I had to load it in front of him. The report probably took 15 to 20 seconds to load, and the first thing he said was, well, why does this take so long? And, for a 24-year-old, that's a crushing comment to hear from your CEO, but it really made me think about, why is it taking so long? What is the back end doing that is causing it to be so bogged down, even though there are a lot of very simple card type visuals, images, kind of things that you wouldn't expect to cause those problems. So that's really sort of what started my journey into the performance, was my own mistake. And as someone coming from a tech background, that tends to be the way you learn in that environment. So why does performance matter? So I have a couple of related concepts from e-commerce and website load times. And overall, the real theme here is if your reports load slow, people will not adopt them. And some of the things that are related to that, for instance, with mobile page load times, as load times go from 1 second to 3 seconds, your bounce probability increases by 32%. As it goes to 5 seconds, that probability increases to 90%. As it goes to 6 seconds, it's up over 100% more probable. And as it gets to 10 seconds, it's 123% more probable that someone's going to bounce, meaning that they're never actually going to move from page to page within your website. They're just going to open it, close it, and move on with their life. And then in e-commerce, basically, all the studies have been done are saying users expect page load times in less than 3 seconds. For each additional second, there's a 16% decrease in customer satisfaction. of which 40% of consumers say they would share that poor shopping experience, and 80% are less likely to purchase from the brand again. So if we translate that into a deployment of Power BI and try and get users to adopt a new technology, we look at things like, I'm used to Excel loading instantly. Why is this so slow? You know, we look at things like, I want the insight now. Why do I have to wait? So what that creates are ad hoc requests for analytics departments to have to pull data and send it to people in Excel reports. It sort of destroys your data governance strategies, and ultimately what happens is people stop using it, and then you have to sort of reevaluate, you know, is the platform, is it the back end, you know, why aren't people using these reports? How do we fix it? Where does the problem actually exist? And I can't stress this enough. You have to evaluate the entire thing, and that's the architecture, that is the underlying data model, that's your DAX measures, and your report layout decisions. And I'll illustrate that through the case studies of instances where architecture was the problem and it was bogging down load times by 30 seconds. Other ones where the data model was the problem and it was having a similar effect. Even to small things like you don't really think about, like having too many images on a report page, or using too many boxes or logos, things like that that can really clog query lanes. So what tools do you have to kind of help with these things? The first one, PBI Performance Analyzer. This is a built-in feature within Power BI, and it's just going to give you an idea of query load times, page load times, and then some sort of the cumulative effect of having as many visuals on a page as you may have. You can also copy and paste queries from that and then go examine them in the next tool, which is DAX Studio. I'd highly recommend using this tool. It's open source, it's free. It allows you to look at a number of different things, both from an AAS perspective, if you have a backend model there, or you can connect directly to a Power BI report if you want to go that route. And I'll show that at the end, assuming we have some time. One of the really cool things about it is you can export the metrics about the data set into an Excel file and then load it in what's called a VPAX Analyzer. What that's going to do is it's going to give you things like cardinality, uniqueness, basically. How much of a database is a specific table or column taking up? What is the encoding like? Like, where are there inefficiencies? As well as it will actually print out an entire table format of the DAX measures within a model, which is very, very helpful if you ever have to document or get those approved through a data governance effort. And then finally, we have the Azure portal. That's really useful if you have a dedicated capacity of any sort, whether that be through Embed, Power BI Premium, or an AAS model. And that's just going to tell you things like your QPU usage, since there is a limit at each given capacity, your storage usage. And as I said, it really only applies to those places where you have those dedicated capacities. So the first case study. So this is a multi-location restaurant. They have hundreds of different locations. They were tasked with building a report that was going to analyze their menu items, tell them what's working, what's not. So they did that, and then they brought us in after because there were some issues with performance of that report, and it was preventing them from moving forward with a full Power BI implementation. So to give you a data set size perspective, it was somewhere in the range of 250 to 300 million rows of transaction level data within a Azure SQL database. So the full architecture, the data source, there is a company called Restaurant Magic that was sending data into that Azure SQL database on a daily ingestion. It was not shaped in any way to be a true backend EDW. It was just flat table structures. From there, they did their own faux data model where they were just creating views to sort of make facts and dimensions, and then importing those into an Azure Analysis Services instance where they were doing their DAX and all of your relationships and things like that. Those were actually being refreshed through an Azure Logic app. And then from there, they built, they had a live connection to that Analysis Services instance in Power BI where they created that whole report. So as I said, there was no materialized EDW supporting the data model. That's a fairly large issue, but something that we were able to get around until they were a little more ready to invest in the effort it would take to build that back end. But again, that largest view, around 200 million rows, and the grain itself was at the menu item order per person per day. So there was both a transaction ID as well as a customer ID, which was more or less concatenations of various fields to create those unique identifiers. It was a single fact once it was actually imported, the fact sales, and then there were a few different dimensions that were created off of that. So to get into the issues, the big ones were there was no real surrogate key. They were connecting relationships through both text to text and date to date. Those are huge process sucks. And once you get to the size of 200, 300 million, those start to really stick out as things that cause issues. The other thing was the multi-field concatenation was just large. It was basically causing a varchar. I think they ended up having to use like a varchar 1000 or something like that and import that into the analysis services instance, which just ate up a ton of space in that, which actually caused them to have to scale their instance 2 or 3 times, probably prematurely, to be able to handle those sort of inefficiencies. And you can sort of see here, we have that fact sales, and within that fact sales, you would have something like location 1, a sunshine combo was ordered on 9/1, and the customer who did that was this concatenation. And you can see the actual connection points, like dim date, it was a true date field. Dim menu was actually the text column joined to the text column within that, and dim location was the text column joined to the text column over there. There are also some small unused columns within the dimensions, which whenever you can get rid of things that aren't going to be used, it's just best practice to go ahead and get rid of those. So once I actually ran it through the VPACs and I opened it up, the one thing that really stuck out was that customer ID was accounting for 87% of the entire database size. And that's what I was talking about with that varchar field basically eating up a ton of space. So that alone tells me, okay, we have something that's a very good candidate for changing or reworking and will have a significant impact right away. So what did we do? We reworked the view layer to optimize the key structures. So we basically took all of those non-circuit keys, made them into circuit keys. So you have things like dim menu key, dim location key, dim date key as an actual integer rather than a date. And then your customer ID, we did some magic on the back end to generate a unique numbering every time the refresh ran. So then rather than having to pull in that concatenation, we could just pull in a small int field, which saves a ton of space. Basically, the result of that was a 60% reduction in the total model size, which when you have 15 gigs of space on your capacity is very significant. And the data import was reduced from 45 minutes a day to about 15 minutes a day, which again is a big deal. Just from a orchestration perspective and making sure that your reports are ready to go in the morning for your end users. So what that actually did at that individual database level was it decreased things from 87% to 43%. And next, we have the DAX. So within their DAX, there was a couple of things that stuck out. The first one, they were trying to do distinct accounts on high cardinality columns. So that was things like that transaction ID and that customer ID. So as we know, when you write that DAX formula to do a distinct count, it has to do a full table scan. And that's very costly once you get up again in the 200 million, 300 million row range. Rather than that, if they were to do something where they had a true distinct already at the transaction level and they could just do a sum or a count, it would just make things a lot faster. Variables were not being utilized at all within the actual formulas. They had a lot of time-based comparisons where they were basically doing things like if this is greater than this, then A, if not B, or things like that, where they had to repeatedly calculate measures, where if they would have declared that at the beginning, it would have been stored in memory and just saved a little bit of time there when it actually goes to run that query. And then there were a large number of date range measures. Nothing we can do about that. That's just how they like to compare their data, but that is a concern when they have other inefficiencies. It sort of compounds the issue. And over here on the right-hand side, you can see some of the actual query performance from that report prior to doing any of the fixes. You know, we have things like 57 seconds, minute, 115 seconds. Like those are very, very significant time frames to wait for a report to load. And I know personally, I would think something was broken and either refresh the page, which makes it worse, or I would just leave. I think that's pretty common once you get anything above really 10 to 15 seconds. So what did we do? We changed and got away from the distinct counts of those high cardinality tables, things like row counts or sums, as was mentioned, and then we declared the variables wherever we could. So here's an example of one where we kind of did that, the variable of last year versus this year, and then we were able to do the date over date change using this simple divide function at the bottom. So next, we took a look at how is the report actually developed, what visuals were being used, was there a lot of slicers on the page, things like that. So this is blurred because there is some customer identifying information here, but you can see they have 17 total visuals, or 17 visuals, 20 total load assets on the highest density page. There were 12 pages total in the report. There was 8 to 12 slicers per page. And then the 30+ second uncached load time from the PBI service. So one of the big things there is the slicers. At least for me, I tend to push those into the filter pane whenever possible, especially if all they're really doing is working as a report level slicer, something like I want to change to the North Division, or I want to change to this specific restaurant. That can really fit within the filter panel, and it takes away all of those additional items that need to be loaded to generate the page, which just clears up the query lane. So overall, the actual cumulative effect of all the interventions that we just discussed, redoing the data model, fixing the DAX, decreasing what was in each report page, we got that load time from 30 seconds down to about 4 seconds, which is well within an appropriate range, especially with a data set that is in the 200 to 300 million row range. You'd expect a little bit of lag there, but overall, with no materialized CDW on the back end, that's a pretty good reduction in total load times. Okay, so next, I don't know, I guess I forgot to hide a slide there, but our case study 2. So this is a SaaS company that is in the data privacy realm. They basically have a program that goes out and it looks for sensitive data located anywhere within your network. It logs that data and then reports it back to the consumers. They decided to use Power BI Embed rather than trying to give individual logins to a bunch of different users at the Power BI service level. So they basically have a client portal where they were embedding 5 reports at once, all into the same page of the client portal, all within initial site. That's being served up by an Azure SQL Server, which was collecting the data on a daily basis from the various clients as a daily push. It would just send that data up to a central repository. When we looked at the load times, it actually really wasn't too bad. So on an individual report, so one of those 5 reports that were feeding that client portal, it was only taking 1 to 3 seconds at the desktop level and 3 to 5 seconds at the service level. So it kind of tells us, well, maybe that's not the real issue. It may not be something that's affecting at an individual report level. However, when they actually embedded all of those reports together, the cumulative load effect was causing it to take 15 to 30 seconds to load at the client portal level. So to give you an idea of what that looks like, They had a banner with some very simple summary visualizations, and then they had each of the other reports embedded, all within the same visible space. So you couldn't do things like bootstrapping. Really, you couldn't preload things because it was the initial load page. But basically, what was happening was there was about 980 requests being sent by the browser, which was basically leading to competing resource loads. You know, a browser can only handle so many requests in parallel, and that's well above it. So inevitably, one of the iframes or two of the iframes was getting caught behind some of the other ones and was having to wait till they were fully initialized to actually start their own load. And that sort of created a stacked effect that really is the main reason why it took so long for those things to generate. Another thing to call out here is they were loading the reports in view mode, which is important. That will decrease some of those requests that are sent. If you want end users to be able to edit reports, you can't really get around that. But if it's really just being used as a presentation, then loading it in view load will reduce the overall browser load. So what did we do? We determined that the actual architecture was the issue. We tested loading one iframe at a time, and it was fine. We tested loading two iframes at a time, and it was fine. We tested three just to go down that route, and that's when we started to see some of the negative effects. So what we decided was, well, let's cut it down from 5 iframes to 2 iframes. And we'll be able to recreate the same sort of boxed layout within the actual single report while preserving your summarized banner as a second report. So what that looks like now is a single banner here at the top with still their summary cards, and then a second iframe, which was a little bit larger, that would house all of those disparate reports, all now combined into one report and pushed as that. It decreased the requests to about 500, and it decreased the load times to about 7 seconds. So to give you an idea, that's already 50%. For some browsers, it was even better than that, but it still wasn't quite good enough. We were still off of the necessary SLA by about a second. Really, the company had decided that anything past 6 seconds was a no-go for production of the actual report. So next, what did we do? We took a look at the data model. So another instance of best practices not really being followed. Each report had a flat table feeding that report that they were doing all of their measures off of, rather than a backend EDW. And they were very wide and long tables. So the summary banner, for instance, there were 4 total visuals on it that were only ever highest level aggregations. But to make those visuals, they had a table that was about 50 columns wide and about 100 million rows long. So you can see that alone, if you're going to go the style of only doing a flat table, you've created inefficiency through not really using the proper grain. And then one of the other things was there was transaction level data that was using timestamps of each individual run, but that timestamp may be every minute or every hour, but they were only ever reporting at either a day or month aggregate. So as I said, the data was really overly granular. Multiple reports were using million-plus row tables to create those simple cards. And then data reported at a daily level, they were still bringing in those individual timestamps, which was just blowing up the tables. And then the other piece of it was they basically had placed all of the compute burden on the embedded capacity itself, rather than pushing some of those back to the server to be already shaped before they're imported. That's important because their plan is to have multiple clients share a single embedded capacity. So if you have one data model that's inefficient, and you multiply that by 5, that starts to create some issues in being able to manage them all on the same capacity, which means you're either going to have to scale up, which becomes very expensive in Power BI embed, or you're going to have to purchase new capacities, which again, it becomes very expensive. As well as if multiple people happen to be viewing that at the same time, that issue would compound on itself because it would be sending the requests all at that same capacity. So what did we do? First thing was we pushed the aggregation server side. Think like, for instance, that summary data set, we got it from millions of rows down to a single row. And then some of the other ones, we were able to decrease the grain, get away from those timestamps, and get those down by 60%. And then the other thing we did was we removed unnecessary columns. For instance, one data set was 20 columns wide, and only 3 of them were ever going to be used. So we just got rid of all of those. That decreased the model size significantly, as well as allowed the load to be decreased by a full second. So now we're getting in that 6-second range that we were looking for previously. However, since you're already doing the optimization, it's worth going through the rest of the process to make sure that you have this thing down as much as possible, so as data sets grow, it doesn't become an issue again. So the next thing was the report layout. This is what I actually found very interesting, because I hadn't fully seen the effect before, or fully fleshed out the effect before. So this is the summary row page. They had 19 total assets on this page with 5 visuals, but 15 images and text box. So you can see this is after I stripped some things out, but you had, this icon is a flat image file. This icon is, this icon is. They were originally creating text boxes next to them, as well as image boxes behind them to create the sort of effect of what they were going after. And that was basically making that report load somewhere between a half a second to a second most of the time. So what I did was I created a wallpaper asset that took all of those not really visual assets and made them a single flat image file, and then put that back into the report rather than having all of those extra things. Basically got the assets from 15 to 1. And what the effect was actually a decreased report page load time by 50%. So it's a simple page, so it's not really going to take a whole lot of time. But you can see that with all of those extra things in, it was literally doubling the amount of time it took to get those card visuals into the query lanes to get them loaded quickly. And that was even after we had rolled everything up to a summary level. So next, the breakout report. So this is what it looks like after we basically, like I said, we combined those 4 individual reports into a tiled effect. So it was a single report within Power BI, and then pushed that up. That had 32 total assets, 12 visuals, and 20 images and text boxes. It had single card visuals for each KPI in the agent overview. So over here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 visuals there where a multi-row card might be able to be used. And that was causing about a 4-second load time on PBI desktop once I had mashed together all of the data sets to create that single report. So I kind of took a very similar approach here. I created that wallpaper layout to reduce the non-visual assets. Again, it brought it down from 20 to a single one. And then I created multi-card visuals wherever possible. So rather than having 1, 2, 3, 4, I was able to do 2 here and preserve the layout that they really wanted. That's actually very significant. It's basically 2 less queries that have to run to generate the page. What did that do? That decreased the total report page load time by 500 milliseconds. You can see that illustrated. Some of these over here are now down in the 1 to 1.2 second range. Okay, so next, a quick recap. So what are the effects of poor performance? 1, it increases end user frustration. 2, it decreases the likelihood to reutilize reports. And 3, those 2 things will negatively impact adoption. What are the things that you need to know from the first case study? First, whenever possible, use integer-based keys. Structure your DAX to avoid full table scans and duplicative calculations. That's some of those variables that I mentioned. And then ensure slicers serve a specific purpose. If possible, push into the filter plane. So if you have a single visual and you want to have a dynamic visual that you can swap between different KPIs, that's a great use to have a slicer there. But if you're just using it to filter down to a specific division or location, that really fits the filter pane more. From the second case study, avoid embedding multiple reports in the same web page. If you can't get around it, try to put one within the initial visible load space and then subsequent lower. So basically you can load one and it will come up quickly. And then as the user scrolls down, the other ones will be loading at a staggered manner. So you never actually run into that query bog down. You're actually able to sort of fake it into being performant. Next, remove unnecessary columns and ensure the proper granularity is used. And then non-data visual assets must be loaded as well. So if you have too many on a page, you can very easily clog the query lane. Okay, I spoke very fast there. Let's see if we have any questions here. And then I'm going to actually go through a demonstration of using DAX Studio, VPAX, and the Performance Analyzer since we have some extra time.
No questions so far, Brian. There is good feedback from the audience. They like what they see, so keep on going.
Okay. What I have
actually, there is one that just came from Stephanie. Apologize for interrupting you. Is there a performance benefit to writing native SQL queries versus Power Query?
I have found that yes is the answer. In that I tend to do the heavy aggregations on the server side and create the proper grain that is needed for the report. But again, if you're on an import model, not a direct query model, then a lot of that gets negated just by caching the data. But that being said, I'm also just much more proficient in SQL than I am some of the Power Query things, so I just tend to go server side with it. And even joins, yeah. So it actually becomes sort of an exercise in performance versus compute. So if you have a very powerful backend, like a Azure SQL DB that's got good power to it, an Amazon Redshift, a BigQuery, something like that, like if you're using something with very, very strong compute power, then doing all of your joins and things there makes sense because it's not going to really do too much to affect that database. However, if you don't have that, if you're an on-prem instance, for instance, you have like a SQL Server 2012 that has limited compute power, then you can push a lot of those joins to the actual model, and it will perform them at the import and do some of them as like calculated tables just to even out that compute pressure. But ultimately, it really does become fit and fiddle. Like when is it right to do it one way versus the other? It really depends on what your systems are. Yes, browser will affect load times. It's gotten better now that Edge is on Chromium, but I have seen Chrome be the highest performer. Edge is good, not great, but we're talking, half a second, not seconds. And I would say Chrome is better. It does use a lot of RAM. However, you're creating a very specific use case, right? You want this thing to load fast, and you're okay with it eating up your compute. Again, from a speed perspective, I've found Chrome is significantly faster. Yes, Stephanie, bookmarks are a great way to hide visuals or create the effect of additional visuals on a page. Another thing that you can do is use simple visuals that have more complex tooltips behind them, because it sort of hides the timing when the compute actually happens to a point where the user is more willing to accept it. Basically, once you have a full report page loaded, from there, people are much more acceptive of performance bog downs because they feel psychologically that they're creating it rather than it was created before they even got there. Potentially, I can't say that I've gone that route before. I've gotten away with, or sorry, I've got away from using slicers in the report for those kind of things because the filter pane has improved so much, and you can hide filters that shouldn't be seen, like if they're on a specific visual, and you can really just almost build it as these are your report level filters, rather than having to embed them anywhere in a report. Let's see, which is better, live query or import mode? Everton, do you mean direct query versus import mode, or a live connection to like an AAS model? Okay. Yeah, I prefer to have an AAS model as the backend and do a live connection to it because they tend to be more powerful. Unless, of course, you have dedicated capacities like a embed instance or a Power BI Premium instance where you actually can choose how much power you have versus just a general Power BI Pro type import model. Different models are better for shared data model better. So in the SaaS model, had I had 6 months to redesign their data model, I would have preferred to do a shared model with row level security and things of that nature. However, we didn't have that, so we had to go with those sort of purpose-driven individual pieces to that model. I wouldn't recommend that as best practices. I would say if you can create a star schema, put the proper security measures in place, and then build off of that. All right. Any other questions before I sort of hop into that demo?
I think that's for now. Maybe what we can do, we can continue with the demo, Brian, and then we'll come back. Ask questions.
Okay. So what I have here, it's a dummy report that I'm working on for a client. Actually, we're creating some comps for them. And I have this performance analyzer opened. So to get to that, in the view tab, you have performance analyzer. And then you hit start recording. I didn't clear the cache, but normally you'd want to clear the cache so that you're not having any of those effects mess with the results here. However, you come over here, you hit your start recording, and then you can hit refresh visuals. And it'll show you exactly how long each visual takes to load, as well as when you click in them, you can actually pull those queries and then bring them over into the next tool. So I won't spend too much time here because it is a fairly basic tool and is just sort of like a starting place on finding where some of the issues might be. But then from there, you have your DAX Studio. What's nice here is you can connect to models both at a PBI level or an individual tabular server and pull all of that in and then run DAX queries against it. So if you're trying to develop something new and you want to sort of make sure it's working properly and it's vetting, when you run those queries, it'll give you a table style output rather than creating the actual visual that would show up in Power BI. So you can sort of look at it, make sure that your aggregations match with what you would expect based on either your back end or things that you've seen previously to help with those going forward. And then from here, I'm connected to a model here. So I'm going to come over into the advanced section, and then you can hit this export metrics. What that's going to create is this VPAX file. So you name it whatever you would like to be, and you hit save. I already have one open, so I'm going to swap over here. Then you can go and download that VertiPax analyzer. I'm using the 2.0 preview, and you hit open VPAX and you load that file that was just generated by DAX Studio. And it's going to give you a ton of information about your model. So it'll start with tables. So you can sort of see the cardinality of the table, so uniqueness, the total size of the table, the columns total size, the data size, the dictionary size, as well as this one here, which is the database size. So on this model, I have a single table that's taking up 87% of the database. That is like instantly a red flag for me to say, okay, if I'm trying to make this more performant or if there needs to be optimization, that's a really good place to start because it's already a data hog. So we'll come over here. That table was called mock time follow-ups, I believe. So we'll come over here and we'll look at that. So this is now the individual columns within the model itself. So it has your table and the name of the column kind of all done here. So I had to create a bin of time ranges for this specific visual. And clearly I'm going to have to revisit how I want to do that in production, but for the comps it'll work fine. And you can see basically that binning that I created alone, single column, is 85% of the database. That was put in as a calculated column at the actual Power BI level. So it tells me, well, can I push this server side? Can I redesign how I do it? Can I make it a measure instead of a calculated column? Things like that are sort of where my head would go as far as what can I do to fix this being an absolute database bloat. From there, you can examine your hierarchies to see if there are any that are causing issues. So like there's the local date table, because I didn't define one of the tables as an actual date, has a fairly large hierarchy size. That might tell me that I have a connection that is not a integer based. It may be text based or date to date, things like that. Let's see, coming over here, we have compression sizes to give you an idea if you have anything that's not actually compressing properly. We have data types that'll give you an idea of all the different data types and then where there might be bloat there. So you can see we have string is basically taking up all of this database. I can expand this to see where those exist at. And then I can go try and dig into how I can decrease or change them from being strings to integers or from, strings to dates or something that compresses a little better. You may be able to do it. You may not be able to do it. But it's another place that you can start to sort of look at how can I decrease these things? How can I make this a little bit better? And then finally, we'll come over here. This is the DAX expression. So I haven't done much. This is a very basic report right now, but you can see it printed out a table with all of the DAX expressions, the type, the name, the actual expression itself. Is it hidden? And then is there a specific format to it? And then if you go through and put your descriptions in as you're writing these things, it'll also print that out. So if you need to store that somewhere else for a data governance purpose, you'll have all of those things already done in the same place rather than having to go copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. It has saved me a ton of time. All right, so that is the performance analyzer and how you would go through and create a VPAX and then load that VPAX to actually be able to look at some of the underlying information within it. Is there any questions on that or any questions coming up in general?
No other questions?
Okay. Well, if anything does come up, as you kind of think about these things away from there, I have my email address here, bskavarch@ccganalytics.com. Feel free to send me anything over. I'm happy to help. Having been through these things previously, I know that sometimes it can be very frustrating. So please feel free to send any questions my way. All right.
Are you at the end of the presentation, Brian, or are you planning to?
No, that's everything I have. Like I said, I talk real fast, so I blew right through it.
No, that was great. I don't think it was fast. Any questions, guys, from the audience? Anything that you want to ask Brian? We are kind of finishing a little bit early today, not a little bit, but quite earlier today. Anything else you want to You want to ask us, doesn't have to be performance related. Maybe we can use that time for Power BI Q&A.
So my company uses the direct query mode for retrieving some of the data sets while connecting from Power BI. Just want to get some clarification in the direct query mode. If when we use the Power BI, and there are underlying joins that need to be performed, and we have a view, so the joins all will be performed on the database side, right? Before the data is retrieved, the result sets are retrieved. So when we have the columns that are let me try to frame the problem correctly. Again, this is one of the issue that was brought to my attention by the team member. So I'm trying to see how do we put together exactly that is the issue. So that they're trying to create a relationship between the columns and the joins. Then the model, they're trying to do a model within the Power BI, right? When they try to do the model, so I have a simple relationship like an asset, and I have corresponding two different asset attributes and some kind of recurring charges. It's just an example here. Now I have basically it's a one-to-many relationship, asset to asset attributes. So for one asset there can be many attributes, and for that asset there will be one-to-many recurring charges. Right now, all these three tables are pulled into an direct query mode. Right now, I am trying to, when we are trying to make the three table joins, all the three tables together in one query, we were not able to see the result sets all from all the three tables on the Power BI reports. For example, on the when we are trying to, the reports comes properly, but the any of the three table, when we do the two table joins, it works properly. But when we are trying to do all the three tables, because it is one to many and another is one to many, the result sets are not coming as expected. Want to see if there is there an issue in the way it was developed, or it is any limitations on the Power BI side?
So to make sure we understand the question. So it's like you have a fact table and there are two dimensions that are joining the fact table, or it's like a many-to-many relationship between two entities and you have a bridge table in between?
Correct. Yeah, you can say that. Yes.
Is it is the latter? You have a many-to-many relationship which you resolve using a bridge table? Is that?
Yes, many-to-many relationship using a bridge table. Correct.
Okay, Brian, maybe.
It's like, I would say this is a fact table, and you have a dimension, and you have a subdimension like a snowflake schema.
Well, that's a different story, though. I mean, if this is that design, it's like a snowflaking. So, for example, you have a group, and then you have a product, and then the product joins to the fact table. So that's different than that's all one-to-many from the top dimension all the way to the fact table. But to you, I mean, the first time you described that, it looked like it's more like classic many-to-many relationship, like a customer and account. You know, one customer can own multiple accounts. One account actually can be owned by multiple customers, which actually is resolved by a bridge table. Is this what you're trying to do? I'm just trying to understand what the schema is.
No, no. It's I have the dimension here is associated with the fact. The fact obviously will have multiple records for that dimension key, right?
Mhm.
Now that dimension also have an another attached subdimension, or you can say reference table,
Okay.
which have multiple attributes attached to the dimension.
Okay.
It's a kind of an nested snowflake schema
It's like
type
a
of an
cascading
model.
relationship. So you have two dimensions, like a snowflake. Okay. So I mean, the first thing that I'm going to do, if you don't expect the if you don't get whatever you expect on the report, it sounds like that's the issue. You're not seeing the data that you believe needs to be shown. Is this SQL Server database, by the way, or Oracle, or what kind of relational database is this?
No, the Oracle.
Oracle. Okay,
Yes.
Oracle is a little bit outside my expertise, but you know, if that was SQL Server, the first thing that I would do is I would just open the performance analyzer that Brian was talking about, and I will capture the queries when you do something on the report that generates the unexpected results. So because this is direct query, what you're gonna get in the performance analyzer is the not only the DAX query, but also the native query that is gonna be sent to Oracle.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean by when I talk about performance analyzer? Do you know where to find it?
In the Power BI
Power
the
BI desktop,
desktop, right?
right? Just go there, you know, activate it, do something on the report that generates the wrong results, get that query, take a look at that. One of the most so if that query doesn't look right, so for example, if you are missing a join or the join doesn't doesn't filter the whatever table needs to be filtered, it's important. The most important property on the relationship is the filter direction, that triangle. So if you look at the diagram view in Power BI, actually, maybe I can show you instead of just trying to see if I can share my screen real quick here.
Okay.
So let's say you've got a model, this is your model. The most important property is this little triangle here on the relationship. So you've got to make sure that it points in the right direction, because basically it tells you which table can filter what other tables. You know, in this case, it means that if I have a visual, for example, table that groups by product category, and then I want to summarize something from the fact table, then you know it will allow me to do that, because the product table can filter the sales fact table, but not the other way. So that will be another thing to check here. And because you're using direct query, another thing that I'll probably check is if you go to the relationship properties, this setting here, assume referential integrity, is also important. If I check that setting, then instead of left join, I'm gonna get inner join between the tables. So this will help with the performance, but maybe it will remove some of the related entities. So yeah, multiple things to check there. Brian, do you have anything else to add? Direct query.
No, I mean that sounds right. If those joins are creating an issue with the actual data coming back, it looks like it tells me that there's something going on with the query itself that isn't expected. So I would say start there as well.
Okay.
Remember, with direct query, everything gets
Yeah,
translated to a native statement that is sent to the relational database, right? Everything you do on the report. So start with the actual statement, see what's going on. That may give you a clue what's not working. But it sounds like you have a scenario like this. Manufacturer joins to product, product joins to sales. And somehow you're saying this does not work, right?
correct. So yeah, you have one too many. If for example, what you're showing me here, let me. If you have, I'm trying to tailor in the same way. I have a sales here, which is sales to product is one too many, right? Now assume that I have, for simplicity, I'm saying sales instead of geography. I have another table called sales forecast or sales asset, right? And that also I see it as one to many from your sales table. Let's say you have one to many relationship. Basically, you have both the ways. I have sales table is a centric table, a bridge table, you can say. You have one to many on both the sides, and I'm trying to join all the three tables.
So I really
it's
have
not
to
a
see
perfect fact to dimension kind of relationship, but the problem is because it is having one to many relationship from the bridge table on both the sides.
Yeah, now that you mentioned this, I start thinking that maybe you guys trying to join two fact tables, which is no for dimensional modeling. If you have if I have like a sales, actual sales and forecast sales, it sounds like there are two fact tables, and you need to join them through the common dimensions, not by joining the fact tables among themselves. Sounds like we have but I need to take a look at the schema and see what's going on in there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share your screen to show us what the schema looks like?
Yeah. Yeah, let me, again, I don't have my desktop opened, Power BI desktop, but I have a screenshot which I can share.
Sure. That'll work. Any other questions, Well, let's see.
Okay, so let me bring up, again, this, what I understood from my team member, it's kind of giving them the model is not acceptable when they try to make these three joins. That's what I understood. So if you see here, is it my screen?
Let's see it. Can you zoom in, please?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the asset table I was talking about. So it has a one to many and to the recurring charge. So one asset can have multiple recurring charges happening.
Sure.
So and then the same asset can have one to many attributes.
Okay.
For one asset, there can be many attributes, right? Now, when we are trying to generate a report which will have for an asset, we are trying to get some of the amount attributes on the charges, and then we are trying to get some attributes related to that asset. All the three tables in a report, I think Power BI is not accepting and giving the results.
So,
Why
but
can't you combine the asset and asset attributes into one table? Is
that will give, I think, multiple
because
entries.
each asset's attributes are the ones that are stored in the asset attributes, right?
Yeah. So this is basically currently the model, it's in the business object. We're trying to see if we can move it to
But
Power
let,
BI.
l- let's just talk a little bit about what the end result is going to be, because I mean, this is very simple. If we look at this, it looks like asset is like a dimension trying to join two fact tables on the side. So that should work. But I think what's happening is that if you just involve asset and recurring charge, does it work?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so now you are involving asset attributes and recurring charge. What do you expect to happen in this case? So let's
In
say, do you want to see charges broken by attributes of the asset?
correct.
Well, that's not going to work because, I mean, asset attributes is on the other side of the relationship, so it has no relationship with the recurring charge. So it sounds like what needs to happen without knowing too much is that the recurring charge needs to be actually related to the asset attributes, which needs to be related to the asset if I want to have a breakdown of charges by attributes. Otherwise, it's not going to work, right? How would you make this work in pure SQL? What
So
would you do?
so basically there is a relationship between these two, right? So once I know the asset of the recurring charge and I do another join with based on the asset ID and get the corresponding attributes. So for
Right, but
that
there is
asset
one
and
to
for
many
that asset
relationship.
attribute, you will have the charges, correct, on the SQL side.
Sure. But how would you do it by attribute? Because when you involved attribute into the query, first of all, you're going to have a duplication of assets. As you mentioned, it's one to many. So if I have an asset A that has attribute AB and AC, then what's going to happen if you do that in pure SQL is you're going to have A, two rows for A, B, and AC, and then you're going to have a duplicated charges.
Charges, correct. Yeah, right. The duplicated charges is fine because we are trying to get the attributes. Some cases it doesn't have two attributes. We just kind to get for the assert what is the location. Let's say the location is okay. It doesn't have to break down. We just want to get some corresponding reference information like a third party. What is the third party of that assert?
Well, how would you have two records in the attributes table for associated with that asset. How would you do a lookup to resolve it to just one value? What would you do?
There is there will be multiple. So basically, the recurring charge will be duplicated. It won't break down, but that's how currently they're trying to associate the attributes for an assert because it has multiple records broken down. So unless what you're trying to say is unless we have these two attributes and the recurring charge interrelated, we cannot come up with a proper breakdown of the report.
No, I mean, I'm just trying to understand what the end result is going to be. If we are saying that it's okay to have a duplicated records on for the asset and recurring charge, then I think the only thing that you need to do to resolve your predicament right now, I think the reason why it's not working the way you expect it to work, is because there is no measure in the asset attributes table. And because there is no measure, Power BI doesn't know what to do with that table. So I will just go ahead and add a count of attributes measure, dummy measure that count rows in the attributes table. I'm going to add that to the report. If you want, you can make the column very small, so actually you don't see the count measure. But that will at least do the reporting from asset to asset attributes. And then what I expect to happen when you add recurring charge, I would expect to get exactly the behavior you describe. but you gotta have a measure on the attributes table, otherwise, you know, it's just not going to, it's not going to work.
Okay.
Hey Theo, is it possible to unpivot that asset attributes and then associate a one-to-one relationship between the asset and asset attributes, and then we can just do the recurring charges, right?
Sure, but he doesn't want to do that. He wants to have duplicate rows. I agree with you, Dom. I mean, that would be the simplest approach if we can maybe do like a, I don't know what they want to do with attributes, but like a comma delimited string of all the attributes instead of having one-to-many to resolve it to one-to-one, then combine them together, then that will definitely solve the case. But it sounds like what he wants to do, he wants to see them as a separate rows in the visualization. So he wants to preserve that one-to-many relationship.
No, that we can keep that as a separate table, but we can unpivot that and then associate that table to this, and so you will have like basically duplication of the asset attributes table twice, one in unpivoted, row, one row per asset, and then this one would be multiple rows. They could just use that one, right?
Yeah, or another design. Maybe you're talking about the same thing. I'm just thinking that if we can have a relationship between asset attributes and recurring charge, that will also solve the problem. Then you're going to have asset attributes as a dimension joining to the recurring charge, and asset joining to the recurring charge. So the only thing that will be missing in that recurring charge is also, is there like a primary key on the asset attributes that uniquely identifies every attribute?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there will be some combination
So,
of columns that we will have to.
so if you add that primary key, hopefully that's not a combination of column to make this more efficient, but like an artificial integer of system identity. If we can add that by doing this, all of the join, if you can put that on the recurring charge table, then you just join asset attributes to the recurring charge. You remove the relationship between the attributes and the asset, because that's not going to be needed. In other words, it's going to be resolved through the fact table. That might be another way to solve it if this is all we're talking about here.
Okay. So the first option that you suggested is to add a dummy count attributes, like a count of assets, you said, right?
Because I mean, this is like a classic. Let's say the asset is like a dimension, and in your case, it's like a joining two fact tables. Think of them as a sales actuals and sales budget. That will work provided that you bring measures from both tables. So if I have a count measure on the asset attribute, and if I do it like this, then try it. I think you're gonna get the behavior that you want. Just give it a try, see what happens. If not, maybe we can take a look at the other options.
Okay. Okay, sure. We'll try that and update in the next one. Thank you so much.
No problem. Any other questions? Anybody else wants to have a?
Well, in response to my question that Stephanie Dean responded to, thanks, Stephanie, all column does not override the page filter. All does, but not all column. And I've been having a lot of frustration with this because my boss wants to use page filters and visual filters a lot, and I find it's really, really hard to produce the measures that he wants, considering the fact that every time I change it, do a page filter, I can't take it away somewhere else in the visualizations.
Bruce, this is Stephanie, what are you filtering in your page versus what are you filtering in your column? Is it the same exact column?
Well, yeah, that's exactly what's going on. That's why I want to do that. It also has the same effect on all except, and
So what is the filter exactly? What's the field name?
Well, let's just say it's let's just say it's gender. Okay, and I have a page filter on gender, but I want to make two measures. One that says, here's a count of all the people that are female. Here's a count of all the people that are male. Okay, As soon as I go and I set the page filter to female, there aren't any males anymore. Okay, even if I use all, gender, like calculate distinct count, all gender, it doesn't work. It just basically, it doesn't, it just has the, whatever I have set in the page filter.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm confused why that would be, since it seems that, and what's the alternative to doing that? If I instead of used a page filter, if I'd used a slicer, would it have respected the all column then? Am I doing something wrong? Is this expected behavior?
The DAX should, the all should any filter context.
If it's just all table, you're correct. But if it's all column, no, it doesn't.
Well, it has, the column would have to be a head-to-head override. So it has to be the exact same column. If
It
you
is
have,
the exact same column. I'm referencing the table and the column in the all statement. All left parenthesis, dim gender in parenthesis. Okay, that's supposed to take away the filter context, so that I can then go and say where gender equal male or gender equal female. And it's not working that way. If I set the gender in the page filter to female, all I get is females. And my visualization basically, that part of the visualization disappears for the males.
okay, here's a question. Are both your DAX and your filter panel filtering from a slicer or a dim table, not from the data table?
I'm not pulling from a slicer. I don't use any slicers.
So you're only using one data table.
Well, I maybe use more than one data table. In the case I'm talking about, I specifically set only one table. Everything was being pulled from the one table. So there was no cross-table interaction. It was connected to other tables, sure, okay? And there were other filters on other tables, but they weren't causing a problem. The only thing that was causing a problem was the fact that I had a filter on the same column that I was trying to take away the filter context in the measure by using an all column name.
My thought is, and Theo or anybody else jump in if you have a thought. It's feeling like there's some mismatch between where you're slicing from one versus the other. That maybe one is slicing into data and the other is slicing into a dim table. That seems like the most obvious issue to me.
Yeah, to me, it sounds like when you do, Bruce, when you do all column, are you doing all column in the fact table or in the dimension table?
In this case, it's all in the dimension table.
Okay, so do it on the fact table and see if that will make any difference. The corresponding column in the fact table, because that's the one that is actually used. That is the one that is being filtered on the fact table sequence.
Yeah, that's not the way. That's the way our structure is. Dim tables hold things like names, addresses, things like that. Fact table has activity like donations and other things like that. In this particular case, I'm not trying to pull anything but the dim table, because I was trying to do counts of, let's say, gender.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm saying is that I'm not touching any of these other tables, directly. So I don't.
Mm-hmm.
So it would seem to me that whatever I'm doing, if I don't have the filter on gender, okay, on the page filter, thing works fine. But as soon as I set a page filter on gender, then all of a sudden those measures don't work anymore. They don't work. The one that says female, sure, it works, okay, but the one that says, take, when I try to say equal male, it doesn't work, Okay, and if I have and if I use an all statement, then I have to use all these minimum date begin, minimum date end, other things like that, because because that does work, and I'm taking away all of the filter context, and I have to put it back on in the calculate statement.
Right. So I missed the initial discussion here, but I assume so in your scenario, if you have a dimension table for the gender, let's say, and then everything is in the fact table, everything else is in the fact table.
No, I don't have a dimension table for gender. It's part of just the name. It's just the name, address, gender, whatever.
So everything is in one table, or you have?
Everything is in one table in this particular case. Okay, so I'm not referencing any other table, for these measures.
Gotcha. So when you filter on gender, so gender is an attribute in that single table, right?
Right.
So when you do a filter on gender, what is the expected behavior for the other calculations? I don't know what they calculate, but let's say they calculate count of
number of accounts.
Gotcha. Right. Okay, number of accounts. So when you do a filter on gender, shouldn't let's say on female, shouldn't the expectation be to get only the counts for female patients or whatever that custom?
Yeah, but let's say I want to also have a visualization that shows all the males, all the I have different measures of female, measure for male, measure for everybody. Okay,
Right.
and I want to use it in a waterfall chart where I have 3 of them in there. Okay, so I expect those measures to behave consistently and properly. And I'm saying is that what happens is that as soon as I set a filter on female, the one that says male disappears, and the one that says all only has a count of females. So,
I got you.
Yeah.
And you're saying that if you do, now I understand why you want to do all columns, so you can specifically override just this attribute. And when you say that, when you start overriding these measures and you put all column for the things that you want to ignore, this doesn't work?
Yes, exactly. With the page.
Oh, okay, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, well, it's a real pain in the ass. Because I got my boss asking me for stuff, and I say, well, I can't use a page filter. I have some 3 visualizations with visual filters, and then there's one that has totals and male and female with the 3 measures. I don't put any filters on that at all because they're all handled by the measure itself. So, but he doesn't like that. He wants to say, well, I want people to be able to come in and just set a filter here so that the screen, the one on the bottom of the chart of the list of names on the bottom is down to just female, but I still want the waterfall chart to work. And I'm like, can't help you, because if you set that as a page filter, the waterfall chart breaks. And this is my problem.
Yeah, I wonder if you simplify this, make it very simple, just have start with one table and just focus on one of the filters. I'm surprised that overriding the all column doesn't work. So maybe you can start there.
Yeah.
And just see
all
why would
table does work. It works everywhere. Okay. But all column doesn't work when it comes to these page filters, and sometimes the visual filters that are over on the side in the filter pane. That's where I'm running the problem. Is the stuff that I'm setting in the filter pane is overriding the all.
So it works if I make the filter a slicer, it works, but it doesn't work if you put it in the page filter area.
Well, I haven't tried that.
I'm sorry, I cannot hear.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay. I haven't actually tried using a slicer yet because I've been busy working, but I suspect it will work because then it's not using that. Yeah.
But it shouldn't matter. So then if you're saying that, it works, let's say on a visual level filter, slicer, but it doesn't work if you move the filter to the page filters area, I would, just compare the DAX queries and see what's the difference. I'm personally not aware of the, something, like changing the query. If I move it from one place to another, it's still a filter. So I'll still expect that to work in the same way. But if there is difference, then I'll be very curious what that difference is. So take a look at the performance analyzer, get that DAX query, and see if there is any difference.
Yeah, well, you and me both are wondering why that is.
Yeah. I should be the same. Should create like a variable filter on that attribute that should be propagated to the query itself. Should work in the same way. If it doesn't, it will be very interesting why this is the case.
Well, I was. I'm sorry you're not.
No, this is good.
Clear answer for me because I've been posting to the Power BI group a lot about this issue, and so far nobody's come back with any help. So I'll keep trying. I'll let you know if I find a way. But like I said, the only way that I've been able to get around it so far is to use the all table, and then use variables to hold all the other things that I need in order to make that work. The problem I run into is that sometimes it's great if you're doing a greater than, less than, like a date range, or you're just picking one value. But if you're picking multiple values, then you can have a real problem. Trying to get all the values so you can apply it in the filter. At least I am having that trouble.
Okay. It's one of those things that you really have to sit down and play with that. Does anybody have any suggestion?
Yeah. I started. Can you guys see my sharing?
Yes.
Yes.
So I just made a quick little table here with a few names that were on the call, just the first alphabetical list. And I've got 2 females and 5 males. And so then if I go back and put a filter on gender as male down here on this page, so you can see that I only have 1 male in the slicer. And then if I take this off, I have both male and female in the slicer. And then I wrote some measures that said, let's go back to male slicer, count the gender that's within this filter context. And so that's just a basic count. And then I did a specific count male, and I get the same value, so 5 and 5, because filter context is applied here. And then you got count female. This is a head-to-head contradiction of the column that's being filtered in the filter context. So that means it will count the females because it overrides the filter context. And then if you do a count all, you do get all 7.
And what do the measure look like? Is just use all column name?
Yeah, just super basic measures here. So
okay,
count all table gender.
Yep.
That column. And this is just a table gender equals F, table gender equals M, and then just a basic count.
So it works with the slicer, it works with the filter. I would imagine they all work the same way, isn't it?
Yep. So if you change this, if you say take it just to female, your count of basic count is 2 to match the female, but your male still works and your all still works.
But he was saying, let's go and clear that filter in the filters pane. Let's just go and use the slicer now.
Slicer?
Yeah.
Same thing.
Okay, so it works the same thing. Okay.
5, 2, 7.
Yeah.
Female,
Well,
2,
the filters again, if you please.
Say again?
Can I see the filters again?
Yep.
I'm not the filters. I meant the measures.
The measures, yes.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's start with general. So the basic one starts with just a basic count. You can do distinct count if you'd like.
Right.
And then you basically you're telling it how you want to add filter context by using the calculate measure.
Yeah.
And so you just keep that basic count, and then you say the table gender equals M. That's for male. And then the table gender equals F for female, and then the count all.
So this is Lance. My only thought is that if I forget, is it Brian? If it's working with all on the table, but it's not working all on the column, then there's something else cross filtering that column. And the best way to find out is what Taya suggested, which is, run the performance analyzer and look at the query when you have all on the table, and the same thing for all on the column, and see where the differences are.
Right. But what Stephanie has done, that's exactly what I would expect. It doesn't matter
same
where
here.
you come from, slicer or filter, it applies the filter. What she's done, Stephanie, could you flip back to the count female or count male, one of these attributes?
Mhm.
So when she does it like this, it doesn't matter what filter is applied. This is going to override that filter. The second argument in the calculate expression is going to override whatever filter is applied on gender, and that's going to filter only the females in this case, right? So, and then all, when she does all, it removes the filter at all. So then you get the count of all the employees. So that's what I would expect. I just don't know. Another thing that you can do very easy, if you think that things are not working, you can just hover, as you know, on that visual. Stephanie, could you hover on top of the table and look at that funnel icon and see what filters are applied there, right? See what other filters are applied from. It doesn't tell you from where, but it will be interesting to see also.
Okay, so you've got a slicer on female.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
We can take that off.
No, it's okay.
Oh.
All right. My question is so the count male.
So this is the direct, I think of it like rock, paper, scissors. So it's whatever I'm going at you with.
I understand what you're saying. What I'm saying is that the count male, since all you're doing is setting a filter on count of it gender being male, shouldn't that be 0 when you've got?
No, because your DAX is going to override a direct match.
It will be 0 if she doesn't override it. It will be 0 if she doesn't override that, but because she overrides the calculate with the calculate function, then she says basically what this does, it says remove all existing filters on the gender and apply only female in this case, if that's the count of female.
Now, see what would happen here is if I were to put the gender in here, then you would have that 0. So if I basically take this off now, you're going to have the female just doesn't even show up.
Right.
And that's because you're putting gender into the
slicer.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's because that's row. Yeah. I'm more concerned. Yeah. Okay.
It doesn't matter where you put it. So basically, it's a head-to-head, and the DAX is going to override any filter context. And your filter context can be in the visual itself. So filter context can be here, or it can be in your slicer, or it can be in your filter pane. Any of those 3 have filter context. And your DAX measure, whenever you use a calculate, is going to override that filter context, especially if it's on the exact same column.
What it does, actually, behind the scenes, Stephanie, it removes the existing filter. So it's like several steps. Calculate is a big monster. You can spend your entire career trying to figure out how calculate works and will still be unsuccessful. But what it does, actually, it removes the filter context on the gender column before actually it applies gender equal to F.
Okay.
In the next step.
All right. Well, let's try what I'm doing. Let's go ahead and pull out that waterfall visualization.
The waterfall?
Yeah.
I don't have any dates in here, though.
What?
I don't have any dates in here.
No. Just pull the thing that looks like a funnel.
The filter?
The visualization.
No, the visualization, the one instead of the water chart, he wants
I think
use the funnel chart.
Yeah.
Okay. And just pull the the count all into it, and the count male and the count female.
Okay, I got those 3 in, and we'll take out count gender. Oh, these are, I see. So there's count all. I don't know if I can put more than one value in here.
Well, you can put it somewhere because I'm doing it. So let me. It's going into the values, no problem, in mine.
3. You got 3 different measures and values.
Yeah.
Can you remove the gender from the group?
Yeah, take that out.
Okay, can you try now? Yep.
Oh, here we go.
Okay. Count all. Okay, now set your filter on male and female.
Yeah, so those are.
Well, yeah, this is a mystery to me because basically I have exactly the same thing, but whenever I'm setting a filter on, let's say, that gender, it's one of them is disappearing.
I want to send Stephanie. I want to send your little thing that you created to him, but it's
Yeah, I can do that. Sure.
That will do basically if you have implicit measures, but not for calculated measures that are defined, right?
Oh yeah, are you writing your measures yourself, or are you using the checkboxes?
No, I write the measures myself.
kind of breaking up, Carl. Yeah, something wrong. Well, it looks like anyway we have to end this meeting.
Well, thank you. I thought this was a great meeting.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Thank you, Stephanie,
guys.
for
I appreciate
putting
that.
together a demo quickly.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, it's a mystery to me. I'll have to figure it out.
If you want to connect on LinkedIn, I can certainly send this to you or maybe help you out.
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay.
Awesome.
I'm probably the only Bruce Sheffer, SHEFFER, you'll find on LinkedIn. So you can just like ping me. I'll be glad to respond.
Sure.
All right, Brian, if you're still there, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it. If you can send me the slides, that'll be awesome. So I can put them on the group page if you want to share. If not, yep.
Yeah, I can send those over. I'll do that right now.
I appreciate that. Guys, I'm going to see you on the next one is going to be December 7th. We're going to have Guy in the Cube. The only one, Patrick LeBlanc, is going to come and also is going to do actually a presentation on performance. So we're going to have lots of information on performance, this meeting and in the next one. December 7th. Thank you so much. Have a great the rest of the week. Whichever way this is going to turn out to be. And I'll see you next month.
Thanks, Theo.
All right.
Thank you, Theo.
Bye-bye. Bye.